Okay, Z, we are live.
Hello, hello. Excited to be here.
Good to see you. So you're in New Mexico. I am in Mexico. I'm here at the Modern Elder Academy doing this writing retreat, and you're at BIPOC, right?
Yep, Northern New
Cool.
Mexico.
So just to give a quick introduction, we met ages ago. It must have been, I don't know, 7, 8 years, and we reconnected for the interview. You're one of the first people that we interviewed for the academic sabbatical project study. And I got to kind of follow your journey from going on the sabbatical, hearing about it, covering it, and then kind of blossoming into what you're doing now. And we'll talk a little bit about that. But basically going from having a Harvard MBA and working in Silicon Valley to teaching mindfulness and breathwork to people of color. So we'll be excited to talk about your book a little bit later. But yeah, how did you come about taking a sabbatical?
Okay. Well, first I'll share that I never thought that a sabbatical was in the realm of possibility for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll share that the realm of possibility happened because a dear friend of mine took a sabbatical. And I was like, wait, you can do that? Like, aren't you worried about getting a job afterwards? But I will tell you kind of what led me to my sabbatical and how my situation, I guess, is a little bit nuanced compared to other folks. Stress is why I left. I had worked in tech for many years. And just working in general is stressful, right? And working in tech, especially, there's big companies in tech, right? And then there are smaller companies and startups. And so I would argue that the stress level at smaller startups is significantly higher because there's just less resources, less people to do stuff. So you're kind of, depending on the culture, every place is different. However, I'd say on average, you're expected to work nights, weekends, and just constantly be on call. So that's like the baseline of, in my mind, my experiences working in tech.
Yeah.
Let me talk about being Black and being a Black woman and working in tech, because on top of that baseline were just a lot of challenges. Like I often was the only woman in the room.
Mm-hmm.
Very often I was the only Black person, and definitely Black woman, not just in the room, on the floor, in the building. One company, a global company, I was the only Black woman at the entire company worldwide, except when like a year later they hired the receptionist. Okay. And so what does that mean, being the only? Well, you're treated differently. Everything from microaggressions. First day of a job, a boss said to me, "Can I talk to you?" And I was like, "Sure." So pulled me aside into a room, closed the door. I was like, "Oh man, this is serious." And he goes, "I just want you to know I didn't hire you because you're Black." And I was like, in my head, I was like, "Excuse you? This was actually like my chill job. Like, I don't even know. Do you know?" I was like, I have 2 degrees from Harvard. I have a track record of, driving revenue, reducing costs, leading teams, and all this stuff. And what you want to tell me is that you didn't hire me because I was Black? That never crossed my mind. So that's like when you arrive. Or I've been asked this question by just somebody like in a hallway. "Hey, are you the new diversity hire? Did not know that was the job title that I had applied for. I thought I was a VP, but thanks." And then the last day of a job, let me give another example. I'm mixing companies here because these things just happened to me over the years. The CMO of the company wanted to have a goodbye coffee walk. I was like, "Okay, sure." I mean, we weren't friends. She never really wanted to talk to me before. Go on the walk, and she's the first line. "So how does it feel to know that the only thing people are talking about is that a Black woman just quit?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah?" Didn't, in my mind, I'm like, didn't know that, And so lots of things would happen to me. I would watch my younger white male colleagues get promoted a lot faster than me. I would not be invited to social events that were, in my mind, felt like the boys club sort of thing. And those things lead to kind of informal opportunities being put on the table, right? Like you're at somebody's house on a weekend. They're like, "Oh, you'd be great for that project." Well, that doesn't happen to me, right? And so I'd say that what happened for me, and going on my sabbatical, bringing it back, is that I experienced chronic stress due to all the things, the baseline, plus just being Black, right? And chronic stress leads to a number of health issues, right? Physical health, high blood pressure, weakened immune system, diabetes, even accelerated aging. Did you know that Dr. Martin Luther King was 39 when he passed, but they did an autopsy and he had the heart of a 60-year-old? So it makes us older. It causes headaches, obesity, but not to mention mental health, because that's also what happened, is that my self-esteem was like crushed when I was watching other people get all these opportunities. Like anxiety and depression. I was like, what's going to happen when I come to work today? Like, am I going to get attacked? Am I going to be asked to represent all Black people? One role that I had, I was asked to share my racial traumas with 30,000 employees, right? And on that call, where it was a webinar format, so everybody could see my face, can't see anybody else's face, but I was supposed to then lead a discussion and allow people to talk. And somebody said, hi, I'm from the alt-right, and I believe the issue here is Black people's racism against white people. And that's the issue. And I'm sitting there, thousands and thousands of people, and my face my face is very expressive. Gotta keep it together. I had to use some breathing techniques to make myself feel better. So basically what happened is that work was crazy. The stress was crazy. My doctor was like, you need to change your life, because now this is starting to affect your physical health. And it's funny, mental health, that wasn't going to get me to quit, right? It was physical health that was like, damn. And so I quit. And my friend who did the sabbatical, I'll say, here's the difference between me taking a sabbatical and perhaps a white person taking a sabbatical. And now this is a generalization, but I mean, if you looked at data, socioeconomic data by ethnicity, it will be clear that if you are a white person, you have a higher likelihood of your parents being able to pay your rent if you need it, right? Now, if you look at other populations, right, I'll just tell you right now, my parents are not my cushion. And so me taking a sabbatical is a huge risk. In fact, for a lot of people of color, we support our families. So for a person of color to take a sabbatical, it's like you're not just risking your own well-being, right, and financial kind of future, but you're also risking your families. And that is super scary. And then also likelihood of me getting a job afterwards. Like, I didn't know, right? I had no idea, but it seemed like, given discrimination and all these things, like, it felt a lot scarier. I mean, I'm sure it's scary for everyone. I'll just say for me personally, it felt really scary.
Yeah. What year was this? Just like put it into context.
I left in 2017.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, one of the things, and thank you for sharing all of that. I think it puts a lot of things into context around the realities of going to work, that many folks don't have to deal with. Like, one of the things that I thought was interesting from your story was like how you got yourself in this position of, getting the name brand companies, feeling like you had to work for them and continue to work for them to have like the prestigious name and, the money to be able to support your family and yourself without the cushion. And so, like, at what point did you realize that this wasn't the kind of thing you wanted to do? Did you have to step back to realize like, oh, this is not what I wanted to do? Or the whole time where you're like, man, I wish I didn't have to do this? Because you're doing something profoundly different now. So I want to understand when the realization kind of came up.
When I decided to take a sabbatical, I just needed a break. I needed to get away from the comments and the people and the stress and the anxiety. I mean, it wasn't like, and I'm ready to find my new passion. It was like, get me out of here. My body is failing. My mind is failing. I couldn't sleep for literally 2 years. I could not sleep. It was terrible. I tried all sorts of things. I couldn't sleep. So was it like, oh, I don't want to do this job anymore? No, it was like getting ejected physically and emotionally from an environment. And it was almost like not a choice. It was, and the day that I did it, and I'd been thinking about it. But once I decided to do it, sorry, this might get a little crass, but when you have to go to the bathroom, okay, let's say you're in a car, right? You're in a long road trip and you're in a car and you got to go to the bathroom. You're like, just a little bit, I got to go to the bathroom. But the closer you get to the next gas station, like that last 30 seconds, then suddenly you have to go like right now, right? And then you like sprint. That is what it felt like. And it was during the sabbatical that I had time to think about, okay, what am I doing with what is the meaning of life? What am I doing with my life? Let me just have some open space for exploration there. But that it was not like a thoughtful decision. It was like, get me the hell out.
But then, so when you heard about this from your friend, what aspects of it made you feel like you had some sort of permission? Was it just like, was it knowing that it could potentially heal you? Was it, you're like, oh, I know that this would be a great thing to do. I'm glad I know someone to show me how, like, re-entering the world. Like, what was your biggest kind of aha with that?
The biggest aha was that, oh gosh, what was the permission? You know what it was? I had a coach. Let me just share with you that executive coaches, coaching, life coaches, the best. Oh my goodness. Because who gave me permission? I didn't give myself permission. I am like an overanalyzer. I do not like risks. And even leaving my last role, like I needed somebody else to just like lay it out for me and be like, okay, what's the worst case scenario? What's the likelihood of that happening? Like I needed somebody else to give me the permit. I mean, it was nice to see a model. Granted, it was a white woman who was that model, so she's not in my same situation. But it was getting like literally like doing stuff like making a spreadsheet of financial runway, right? Like let's get like I am practical. I'm a child of immigrants. Like you gotta get it together. So there was a lot of analysis and a lot of pros and cons lists, a lot of worst case and different versions of worst case scenario planning. So it was a lot of that led me to finally making the decision.
Cool. Yeah. Tell me a little bit about that. I mean, if you remember the spreadsheet or how you would have approached it, right? So you're coming at it from the perspective of like, I don't know, like I don't have a safety net, financial safety net. I've got people who like rely on me. Like, how do you think about, did you think about it as a runway for like, all right, I've got 18 months, but I think it'll only take 12 months? Or did you think about, like, how did you kind of go about creating that and giving yourself permission financially?
I mean, this might just sound super basic, but like making a budget. I mean, like literally, and actually, my friend who went on sabbatical then wrote a few articles about sabbatical taking and actually had some Excel spreadsheet templates. So I literally just like make a copy of Google Sheet and on it had basic budget. Not even that genius, right? It's like, what are your monthly fixed expenses? Rent, food, whatever. Are you keeping your apartment? Are you going to sublet like that? Like sort of like, what is your like just like operating income and expenses? But then the biggest, the most beautiful thing in the spreadsheet was a travel and fun budget and like big ticket item budget. So for example, I wanted to do a yoga teacher training in India. Went on the spreadsheet, you know what I mean? Like so stuff like that, like it's like allowing yourself to do the things that might seem like extra in real life and like really like brainstorm, like what are all the possible things that you might want to do and how much might they cost so that you budgeted for them. So yes, basic stuff, but there's definitely like a travel and also like, I mean, I call it fun, but like, yoga teacher training is like a few $1,000s, right? Like classes, I did a lot of educating for myself. I learned a lot of different tools. And so I included how much it would cost to take those classes, how much it would cost to travel. I will also share one thing that I did, and this is less about the risk, but more about the ideation brainstorming phases. I made a spreadsheet. I'm so type A. I made a crowdsourced spreadsheet that I invited everyone that I knew or was friends with to contribute to. And it was sortable. So I had columns like what would the big question is, if you had a year of free time, what would you do? And then I had categories so people could like label them, right? If it's like travel, learn a new skill, hobby, experience, things like that. And so then I still have it probably. Actually, I've shared it with somebody that was thinking about taking a sabbatical. I was like, oh my God, TV shows were on there. It was like, I would binge watch these series for the first month. And I was like, okay, great. So if ever I had like a period where I was like, what should I do with my day today? I just go to the spreadsheet and be like this. But for the bigger ticket items, it was helpful to understand like, oh, does that appeal to me? Maybe I'll put that in the spreadsheet.
I would love to hit you up for that spreadsheet, maybe the budget spreadsheet. Maybe we'll put it in the comments. And also we've got the bathroom analogies are working with people. So if you need to use them again, feel free to toss them out. Okay. And just to like put a fine point on this, you did not really have a budget, what, 10 years, 7 years after graduating from an MBA. So like, just I'm in the same camp. Like it took the sabbatical before I could say, like, how much am I spending, and realize like, oh man, I'm spending this much on rent. If I, Airbnb'd my place out, then my burn rate would be such and such. And so, yeah, it's not super common, right? The budgeting.
I am not somebody that pays that much attention to my personal finances, unfortunately, because I am so diligent about always having a cushion. Because I am so diligent that I would never, when I was right after college, people don't, I feel like a better job could be done about financial planning for college students. Like nobody explained debt to me. Like I went out, this is kind of embarrassing to admit, Harvard MBA, right? But this is before but I did have a degree from Harvard in economics, and I just like didn't like it in college. I studied abroad in Spain and thought, oh, well, if I don't get the bill, I don't need to pay it. Right. Like very dumb, very, very dumb. All this to say that right after college, living in New York and living beyond my means, because I got to be at all the parties, and I got to go to this and go out to dinner, and this new restaurant opened, and I really want a cocktail from this place. All of that added up to like not good financial planning. And so for me, I do financial planning at big transitions. Like I'm moving, I'm buying a house, I am going on sabbatical, and that's when I'll just take a break. If I'm getting a new job, for example, that is different finances, I will take a step back and do that because I do think it is important. But I also think back to sabbatical planning, this runway thing, and especially like how much do you have in your savings, and also how much of your savings are you willing to spend, and also like what's that point that you're not willing to go past? Like what is your like I always need this amount in the bank, because I am risk averse. My older brother recently was like, no, I'm the risk taker in the family, you're not the risk taker. And I was like, he's right.
Has the experience of making these budgets during transitions or going on sabbatical and changing kind of how much money you made, has that changed how you think about finances or the amount of money you need more permanently, or is it just kind of like cycle in and out?
I wouldn't say that it's changed how I feel about money more permanently. I honestly, I'd say the thing that changed how I feel about money and how much I need is the decision not to have children. So that's like a huge one for me, because I don't have children today, but I for many, many years was like, I don't know if I want children, but if I want children, I need, right? And then that's like a whole spiral of what you need if you have children, which makes, and at that time, even when I went on sabbatical, I hadn't made that decision yet. I had faith that I was going to be able to like get back on that train. And it was seeing models of other people doing that helped.
Yeah. Cool. So, okay. So toe up to the line of you're taking a sabbatical. Like one thing I'm interested in, you talked about like the health impacts that you had seen from the burnout and all of that. Like how long did those take to lift, or did they lift? Because I mean, one of the questions that people typically have is like, what's the shortest amount of time I can take off? And so for someone that's reached the end of the fuse for burnout, like did they start to lift immediately? Did it take a long time? Did you think about things you wanted to do to address that? Or were you just like, let me get out of here?
There was no planning. I was like, let me get out of here. I mean, I will say, especially that last day when that woman, the CMO, said to me, how does it feel to know that the only thing people are talking about is a Black person just quit? The relief in walking out of that building and knowing that I would never have to see her again or respond to that was amazing. Like literally my shoulders went, whew. So there's just that. That said, it does take time to unwind, right? And there's also a little bit of freak out, right? Like, and by freak out, I mean, oh my God, did I make the right decision? Am I going to be able to get another job? Like, I don't even know how to relax. Like my brain has been like, I'm a sound healer with Tibetan singing bowls. And in my like intro talk to the sound baths, I talk about brainwaves, and I talk about how in normal life, and especially in like Silicon Valley tech world, you're at beta waves, like, right? You're just like, you're going. And that's like, right. Okay. And then when you slow down, that's alpha. Maybe you are daydreaming, you're a little bit more relaxed, but you're meditating, but you're awake. And then theta, that's like, you're totally out of it. And so I take people to the state between alpha and theta, that state when you're half awake, half asleep, right? Where you can still hear what people are saying, but you might also be in dreamland. Like that is a state of deep meditation, of deep relaxation, and also sound baths and breath work and a bunch of things can get you there. And I will say that while you can do an intentional practice like that to slow down your brain waves, I say the cumulative beta, go, takes a while to unwind. And I would say that the first month was just literally getting used to not having to do anything. Like even just having nothing to do can cause stress if you're not used to it. And so it takes a while to allow yourself to have that freedom to explore. And I would also say don't overschedule your sabbatical, because I'm a type A crazy person. I really wanted to schedule it really boom, 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 boom. And so I actually, in order to do this successfully, I had to schedule nothing. I had to put nothing in my calendar, free time, open time, exploration time. So I'd be like, no, doing nothing is doing something. Yeah. So I think it takes a while is the point.
I want to come back to the sound healing piece, and I want to fast forward to the work you're doing now. So someone that's in that beta mode, and they're just crazy and they're trying to de-stress and get into sabbatical land, what would you recommend they do given your work now with breath work and healing and that sort of stuff?
Oh yeah. Well,
I don't want to give away the secret sauce, but
more broadly, and this applies to everyone, deep breathing, diaphragmatic breathing. If your sympathetic nervous system is your fight or flight or freeze nervous system, I'm under attack, you're going to feel that way at work sometimes. I definitely did. And so the parasympathetic nervous system, that is your rest and digest nervous system. So anything that you can do to stimulate your parasympathetic nervous system is going to allow you to feel better, allow you to feel calm, rejuvenated. And there are many ways to stimulate your parasympathetic nervous system. So for example, sound healing, I have a 20-minute sound bath on my YouTube channel that one could listen to, for example, or you could attend, I do a monthly sound bath, just virtually, or I'm sure there are people that, depending on where you live, that might do this in real life, but just sound or calm music is helpful. Deep breathing. I said diaphragmatic breathing. That's when you breathe and you stick your belly out on the inhale and then bring your belly back into your spine on the exhale. And when you do that, that also is calming. And there are many, many different breathing techniques that I teach based on how you're feeling and what the issue is, whether it's anxiety or exhaustion or what have you. So yeah, many, many, many things one can do, but just pausing, even just three deep breaths. You can take one, but 3 deep breaths in the moment can be huge.
I remember going to a public speaking class at HBS, and I was like, oh man, this is gonna be great. I'm gonna learn how to do public speaking. And all the guy did was breathing exercises to just calm yourself down. And the end of it, he was like, yeah, I'm not gonna actually teach you about how to speak or what to do. You got into here, you're probably fine. But now that you know how to relax, you'll be way better off. And I was kind of but I use it every time before I get up and speak. So I
love it. I was talking to somebody that did a TED Talk, and she's like, oh, everybody that does TED Talks takes, and I'm going to mess up what it's called, but in my head, it's called beta blockers, or I don't know, something that calms your nervous system and allows you to slow down and relax. And I was like, what? Everyone that does TED Talks takes drugs, or maybe it's natural. I don't really know. I was like, oh, wow. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
We could probably call back to another bathroom metaphor, but let's move on here. So, okay, so this is you 5 years later, right? 2022, 2017, more or less.
Yeah.
And you're giving people advice on meditation and breathing and sound healing. How much of that did you have 5 years ago? Is this learning and a path that you've kind of pursued exclusively since then, or was it something that you had a hunch that you wanted to do? Tell us more about that journey.
Okay. So I had been meditating for a while before I even went on this sabbatical. I was meditating because my friend Julian, who I love dearly, we went to college together. He's great. He was like, I've been meditating lately and it's been really helping with my focus and productivity. And I was like, what? I was like, Black people don't meditate. That's what I said. It is very ironic that now my entire job is to teach Black people and BIPOC communities how to meditate and how to breathe to feel better. But many years ago, I said Black people don't meditate, but I was stressed. The struggle is real. I remember a period where I really wanted to switch functions, and I just wasn't. I was getting rejected everywhere. It's like they don't give people. How do I put it? And I feel bad saying they. I'll just say that some people get given the benefit of the doubt. So let's say that you have, done a lot of marketing. They'll be like, because of your marketing skills, we think that you have the potential to be good in sales, right? Mm-hmm. So that's for, some populations, but for people that look like me, no, it goes like this. You've done marketing, you've never done sales. And so I don't think that you can do sales. You need to prove to me that you have successfully done sales and have a track record over a period, and then I'll hire you. Mm-hmm. Right. And so dealing with that, it was just I was just a mess. And meditation actually helped me to get through a lot of those hard times. So I had been a student for a while. I was going to the East Bay Meditation Center, and there were a couple other places in San Francisco, and I would go regularly. And I was a student to yoga. I was a student to meditation. What my sabbatical allowed me to do were the things that I always wanted to do that I'd never had time to do because I was always working. And so that's when I was like, I always wanted to do a yoga teacher training. I always did, but I never had the time. Yeah. I went to India. I wanted to learn these things from the source. I was tired of learning these tools from white people. No offense. I love everybody. And I have had many amazing white yoga teachers. There's one in particular that I love. You know who you are. However, I wanted to learn from the source. And so in my sabbatical, it allowed me to learn things to go deeper in things I already did, meditation and yoga. Sound healing was new. I developed that in India. I learned how to teacher, et cetera, with Tibetan singing bowls. Breath work is something that I barely knew. At the beginning of a yoga class, maybe they might do some pranayama. Pranayama is for those that don't know. But I didn't go deep into it. And so the sabbatical allowed me to go deep into breath work, and all the different breath work is a huge realm of stuff. So I'd say I learned a number of tools. And what I realized on my sabbatical are these tools are much more impactful outside of the yoga studio and the meditation studio, and in the context of everyday life. And everyday life for me means I'm a Black person in America, and everyday life is hard. Let me give you an example. I went to the grocery store, like one does, just going to the grocery store. I was going on a camping trip. And cross-country camping trip. I was moving to Colorado, and my car was packed to the rim. And what do you do on camping trips? You go to the grocery store to get supplies, because I was about to be in national park. There are not going to be any stores. And so when I was at the grocery store, an employee called the police and said that I stole deli meat. Okay, I'm a vegan. Okay, I'm a vegan.
I remember you reading your post about this.
Yes. And so it's very difficult to find meat in a vegan's car. And I had spent $220 in the store. I had the receipt, and I showed the policeman all the things. We went through the bags and went through what's this? I was like, that's a cucumber. It's an English cucumber. He's like, what's this? I was like, portobello. At this point, I was like, wait, this man doesn't even know what vegetables are. But the point is that Black people die. Okay, we get murdered. Oh my gosh, somebody commented on a TikTok post this week and said that Black people get unalived. I was like, wait, I have never heard that word before. Unalived. Well, so that happens with the police. And it's my breathing practices, right? With the police, as they're yelling at me, accusing me, acting like I'm a common criminal after I'd shown the receipt. It's my breathing techniques that allowed me to calm myself down, to not be as scared as I was scared, just not to show that I was scared, to not tell him what I really thought, how much of an idiot he was for not believing me that I'm a vegan. And after going through all of my bags, I lost a sleeping bag and everything all over the parking lot floor, right? And it's the breathing that helped me. And so that's kind of, what led me to what I do today is I took all the tools that I learned, the breathing, the mindfulness, these exercises, even just like body scanning, right? And I used them in the challenges in my own life. Like when, again, with the police, I was playing violin at a violin vigil for a guy named Elijah McClain. He was a violinist murdered by the police unarmed walking home from the store in Colorado. And so there was a violin vigil for him at a park in Aurora, Colorado. And I was there. I played violin with other violinists. And then the police came with their riot gear and they sprayed tear gas, right? And so it's like, how do you calm yourself when literally it's chaos and the police are attacking you and you're holding a violin being like, what the F is happening? Breathing. That helps me to calm down. And so I believe that Black people all over the world, but especially in America, need these tools in order to manage in the moment so we don't get murdered by the police, or in the moment at the job when somebody says something offensive to you, like you went to Harvard? Okay, what are you supposed to respond to that, right? Deep breaths. I do a belly breath so that I can respond with kindness, Last week, actually, you don't know this because we haven't spoken recently. Last week, I had a flat tire. I was on the side of the road and a man drove by in a pickup truck, and somebody in the passenger seat of his car had half his body outside the passenger window. He's like outside of the window. He had 2 middle fingers and he screamed, excuse my language, "You fucking coon," is what he screamed with 2 middle fingers, yelling at me out of the car as they drove by. And I I was like shocked. My body was like frozen, but that said, I needed to do some breathing because if I yelled back, you know what might happen? He might come back with a gun. And that is real. So I'd say what I do today is I take these tools, right? The breathing techniques, and I teach people how to use them in the context of everyday life. So far with my business, Reclaiming Flow, I work with companies' employees. I train their employees, their Black and brown employees, the Black Employee Resource Group, the Latino Employee Resource Group. And I have workshops like microaggressions, like mindfulness to heal from microaggressions at work, countering imposter syndrome. How many times did I doubt myself because I saw somebody else that was less qualified move up the ranks a lot faster? What else? Like bringing my whole self to work. You see these curls? I didn't know what they looked like till I was 35. Okay. Why? Because it was unacceptable to have curly hair, in financial services in 2002 when I graduated from college, right? And throughout, it's taken a while for natural hair to be okay. So code switching, right? Like changing the way I talk, not lying, but hiding what I did over the weekend, my family background, all these things. I teach people, how can you use mindfulness to decide whether to code switch or not, right? Rejuvenation from Black fatigue. When you are exhausted, I teach a workshop on Black fatigue and fatigue in general. How do you revive your energy when you are exhausted because you're tired of somebody constantly doubting you? And the last one is mindfulness and self-care. And the reason I teach that one is because we have all these things coming at us. I shared with you the physical impacts of chronic stress, right? And if you look at some of those, high blood pressure, Black people have higher rates of high blood pressure than anyone else. Diabetes, same thing, also a product of chronic stress. Who knew, right? And so we need to proactively take care of ourselves because, I didn't know that a man was going to call me a fucking coon last week. To be honest, I had to go Google what coon meant because in my mind, I knew it was derogatory, but I didn't know what it meant. I was like, oh, a raccoon? Anyway, and so if you know that these things are going to happen to you, it's better to have a stronger baseline of feeling good so that I'd like to say if, but I'm just going to go ahead and say when they happen, you have a stronger baseline of you slept last night, for example, right? When you sleep, you have faster reflexes. Your brain is working well, right? But if you don't sleep, you don't have the self-care. So I teach that. And so today I teach all of these things to companies, employees, companies like Google, HSBC, Visa, a whole number of companies. And that's about issues at work. What I am starting to do more of, especially with this book coming out, is how do you use these tools outside of work? So, if you're a Black person, you've probably been followed around the store, right? It's called racial profiling, right? First time that happened to me, I was 14. I was 14 at a mall in a wealthy suburb of DC. I grew up in DC. And that was fun. And the security came. We didn't do anything. We were in our like private school uniforms. How dangerous is a girl in a green plaid skirt? Like seriously, right? But like so these things happen outside of work. I started with work just because of my burnout sabbatical. Like that's what led me here. But it applies in the store. It applies when you're at the airport. Like there's so many things that happen outside of work where these tools can be really helpful.
Yeah, I wanna echo a comment that came in about, they said your transparency is refreshing, and thank you so much for sharing so deep and so transparently. I know that I'd followed you obviously after our interview and had seen the shopping while Black post, which I thought was like really eye opening for me. So like just kind of cutting to the chase, like we're talking about like BIPOC sabbaticals, right? And we know like putting aside someone's ability to take a sabbatical, which is a huge thing, but let's like, you know, the theory of change that I'm operating from is if it's accepted by companies, if it's paid for, if you're not kind of discriminated against for taking time off, right? Which are huge assumptions, and we have a long way to go. But that, yeah, assuming that folks can take them, like what's in it specifically for people of color, and what would you kind of recommend? Like, why would you recommend aiming for a sabbatical versus, you know, going on some retreats or taking more vacation?
Wow, this is a huge question, and what immediately came to my mind is maybe going to make me cry. You see, we Black people have a huge amount of gifts and talents to share with this world. The reason I'm about to cry is that we are not set up to share these talents with the world because of systemic racism. I mean, let me tell, do you know how interested I am in banking? Let me tell you, I have zero interest in banking. Much love to all my old coworkers. Okay, zero interest in financial services. I mean, I think it's necessary, obviously, very necessary. But in terms of how I want to spend my day, but why? Why was that my first job out of college? Because I had to, because I needed a job. I graduated in 2002. Okay, rewind like recession ago, right? Okay, or even, I don't know, am I counting wrong? The point is, there was a recession when I graduated from college and I needed a job, and I could not move back in with my parents because guess what? Most Black people can't. And no, they weren't going to help me. I needed a job. And so I'm then forced to do these things that's just J-O-B. And now, granted, I'm not saying that we're not offering our talents. We are in these roles. We are in these jobs. We're doing all these things. We're doing the best that we can. However, a sabbatical gave me the time and the space to, first of all, just recharge. Like, let's just start with feeling better, because I didn't even realize that my baseline from the moment from 8 years old, from the first day of school at my fancy all-girls private school that I went to, was stress and attack. Okay, from 8 years old until my sabbatical. Okay, how many years later is that? Decades later, my baseline was I'm being attacked and life is hard and stressful. And so just as simple as, wait, I can like take a deep breath and relax and like nothing bad's gonna happen. Okay, that's baseline. But then getting back to my earlier point, it's once you're at that baseline and once you feel good, then you can really have the space to explore and identify what are your passions. What do you really enjoy doing? What really matters to you? Because I have to, I was just talking to a business school classmate, Harvard Business School, right? Business school classmate. And I was like, I hadn't talked to her in a while. And this is what she told me her priorities were in this order: my children, my job. Wait, there were more. But anyway, the point, there were like 5 things, but her husband was like number 5. I was like, is he okay with that? and so all this to say that, like, when you do not have space, you can't be thoughtful and intentional about what your priorities actually are. And it doesn't look, I went on my sabbatical thinking I was going to go back to a corporate job, and I did for like a couple years actually. But I had a different perspective on what was important to me. I had a different, oh my gosh, let's talk about quiet quitting. Oh my goodness. Are you familiar with quiet quitting? Have you been reading about this?
Of course. Yeah. I did my obligatory LinkedIn post about it.
I have not commented on quiet quitting. And let me tell you why, because Black people cannot quiet quit. That is not a thing for, because you know what happens when we quiet quit? We just get fired. Okay. Quiet quitting for Black people equals getting fired. I want to share that what quiet quitting might allow other people to do is have the space to like identify what's important to them, to do things that bring them joy. That sounds awesome. And I'd say that because Black people can't quiet quit without getting fired, we need to take a break if you can. It's hard. It was really hard. It took lots of planning, to really figure that out. And so that you can bring your best self into this world. We have a question in the comments, which is, what is it? I assume that is, what is quiet quitting? And so I will share my interpretation of quiet quitting. I don't know, you might have a different interpretation. Quiet quitting is when you decide you're not quitting, you just decide to do the bare minimum at work. You're not going to give it your extra and your all. You're going to clock in and clock out. 5 p.m., I'm done. I am not going to answer this email over the weekend. I am not going to do this extra project. I'm not going to offer up my extra. I'm just going to do the bare minimum so that I can coast, and maybe with the intention of self-care, which is great. I'm all self-care, but that is my interpretation of quiet quitting. How'd I do? What's your interpretation? Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, in general, like kind of like the Great Resignation, I'm not even sure that there's data and an actual there about it. Like it originated as a video on TikTok, but I think, like that's my understanding as well. It's like, does not going the extra mile, is that equivalent to like quitting, and should employers be worried about it? And I think in general, like my understanding of the response is like, oh, it's great to like actually have boundaries between work and life, and not consider your company to be a family because your family doesn't fire you, if you don't come to work like 3 days in a row and things like that. So I think it's kind of like stems from like, and I think it's a result of people having, like, workers having more power than ever before, through this pandemic, of folks being like, actually, I saw what it was like when I turned work up to 11 because I was stuck at home and my kids were driving me crazy and I was on Zoom calls all day, and I want to set deeper boundaries. So yeah, I think you did a great job explaining it. And I think it's like another example of folks saying like, all right, how do I want work to look in the future? Because companies are like, hey, remember how we said we could do all these things? Well, now we're like rolling these back to what it was before. So it's an interesting time.
So I will share that for Black people, we have always had to work twice as hard to get treated this equally, right? And so for us to quiet quit, I'll just say that the impact, even though companies are now committing verbally, since 2020 to diversity numbers, I will share that the reason I do what I do is that I would say, okay, no offense to all my old coworkers, I love all of you. Y'all are great. How do I put this? None of the DEI initiatives were for me. None, I'm going to repeat that. None of the DEI initiatives felt like they were for me. Implicit bias training, right? That's like, how can we help white people be less racist? Talent acquisition, amazing. Recruit externally. Do not hire from within. Do not promote from within. Hire externally. And so what happens if you look at the retention numbers of Black people, right? And so this is back to this concept of quiet quitting. Well, I mean, they're also people, they're stereotypes. We might get accused of being lazy. Even you're giving your best, you still might not get promoted. And you'll see some negative comments about how you're not a cultural fit in the performance review. And that is why I say that quiet quitting, notice it's not Black people talking about quiet quitting. Although I will say some people will be like, people have been quiet quitting forever and this never talked about it. But if you want to get ahead as a Black person in corporate America, quiet quitting it will get you fired, basically.
Yeah. Okay. So I just want to like go back to this notion, and this is something I struggle with my work. It's like I'm hearing you, and I believe it, but like, what is the difference between extended time to help someone like truly recharge versus taking a longer vacation or taking Fridays off every once in a while? Like, what did you find was different about the space of the time that you gave yourself?
You asked me how long it took to like unwind, and I'd
Yeah.
say a while. Like, I mean, an extended vacation, let's say you take a month off. I mean, the first month, 3 weeks even, is just adjusting and calming down. When you
Yeah.
go on a vacation and you're like, oh, I finally got like to exhale, and then you got to go back, and then you get the stress of having to go back to work and all the things that'll happen. So I'd
Yeah.
say a sabbatical gives you that extra space you get to calm and recharge. And
Yeah.
from calm and recharge, there is where innovation comes. That's when the most creative ideas, that's when you can listen to your intuition, right? And people have different words for intuition, but that voice in your head that is like, what about this idea? Well, notice those things only come when you are relaxed and recharged. We could talk about brainwaves again, but those things come when you're between alpha and theta brainwaves, when you are chill. And that's what I was talking about, the gifts that Black people have to give. That channel is not even open when you're on survival mode, right?
Yeah.
Talk about, surviving and thriving. We're just on surviving, like for real. And you're going to be on surviving if you're working.
Yeah. So two other things I love about your story. One, in our research framework, and again, that partially it's based on your story, right? Because you were one of the 50 kind of respondents. But we have this framework of like 3 stages of restoration, exploration, and practice, right? And so I feel like your story kind of maps totally onto that, where it's like I had to restore before I could go out and do my exploration of what I want to do next. And then I have to like try those things on a little bit to see if that's really what I want to do versus just did I conceptually want to do it. And so from the parts that I know and from what you said, it's like you went to explore yoga and you actually came out with like sound healing, right? And so like if you had just been like, I've got a week, I'm going to do a yoga retreat, in Western Massachusetts, like you're not going to kind of get to that place, right? Of actually like finding things outside of your first idea, your first hypothesis.
Exactly. And in fact, breathing and breath work has become like core to my being, to my message. And I, as I said earlier, had just done a couple like pranayamas occasionally at the beginning of a yoga class over 20 years. So yeah, it was that extra space that led me to, wow, breathing is actually the answer.
Yeah. And I mean, I kind of think about it back to the grocery store, not this specific grocery store, but like a grocery store analogy. Like it's the equivalent of going to the grocery store when you're starving, like you're going to be getting chips and like pulling candy and things like that. Like if we're making decisions about what we want to do next before we've had a chance to like, come down a level and like explore and, be operating not from this perspective of like franticness or, as you're talking about, like we're just going to make suboptimal decisions.
Yeah. And I will say, this is the first time I've heard you say this framework. Sorry, I didn't read the research paper thoroughly. But the practice piece is so the restore and explore pieces, I think most people know about. The practice piece is actually huge. And I will say, and maybe we didn't talk about this, but I started teaching classes. Right. I was teaching meditation, just like not for money. I mean, yes, for money, but like not for real money, mostly for like hobby money, donation based sort of things. And I was teaching breathing and I was teaching sound healing and I was teaching meditation to try it out and to see whether it's something that I did enjoy. And actually, that led me to my focus. So when I first started teaching, I moved to Denver. And the people that came to my classes were mostly white people, white women. And I love everyone. And I think everybody can benefit from breathing and everybody can benefit from sound healing. But I felt like the people that could benefit most are the people with high blood pressure, the people that are experiencing the discrimination and the microaggressions and even just the blatant racism. Like, I'm still stuck on the fucking coon comment because I'm still in shock. And I'd say that it's the people experiencing that need the breathing most. So by practicing, that led me to understand where my passion really lied within the umbrella of what I was doing.
Yeah, I mean, it's in business speak, it's like the minimum viable product, right? You're like, all right, I'm going to try this meditation thing. Oh, like through that, I realized that here's my market and segment. I love that. And
yes.
And like the other thing I love about it, I didn't even know that part actually. And just a quick question about that. Did you feel like that money, like the little money, the dharma that you got, do you feel like that you treated that differently? Because you're going from making, I'm assuming, a fair amount of money, right, in banking and tech, to making like a very relative small amount of money, but doing something that you're really interested in and you're treating as like an experiment. Did that money feel different to you?
I would say that money didn't, that money was not for me. That money, the reason I charged a donation-based fee was so that people would feel like what they were doing had value. So it was actually for them, because the money that I made was almost invisible. Like, it did not, it was not. So to me, I didn't even notice that money. To me, I think that there is something very valuable in paying for a service because you feel like, oh, this service has value to me. And also you feel like you're investing in yourself. So I gave people that gift.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. I appreciate that. Another question that I had, and observation from your story, and you can set me straight here, but one of the concerns that folks have that I hear a lot is they're approaching what they think was like the end of their sabbatical, and they're like, I don't know what I want to do next, or I'm not confident that I've like found it, or I'm going to end up in like the exact thing I want to do. And what I try to assure people of is like, even if you don't stick the landing right when you return from sabbatical, like you've set into kind of motion a lot of the things that will bubble up later. Or maybe like that step, the medium step is important. Like you have to get your financial house in order or something. So I view you as kind of taking like one or two steps before you got here, and those steps being important. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I was definitely one of those people. In fact, well, it kind of went like this. I said, I'm going to take a year off because a year sounds like a round number. That's what my friend did. That's what I noted. Right. And at the end of the year, I was like, I can't go back. I was like, I can't, I cannot know. Like, it was like, right. Like, and so I took more time. I took almost another year actually. And at the end of it, I got a job. I got a job because I didn't know what I wanted to do. And it was like, I was like, well, I've been spending a lot of money. let me get a day job again. And so I didn't do anything that significantly different. My last title was VP of Product and Business Intelligence. I led technology initiatives and user experience and stuff that I had done previously. But all that I learned during my sabbatical, I applied to my personal life in the workplace. And it was there because then I went back to the microaggressions and I went back to all of the like race attacks, even though they weren't meant to be that way. That was not intentional. I believe everybody has a good heart. However, the pain was real. Again, I wasn't sleeping. I was crying. It was terrible. And it was all the tools that I learned that helped me to deal with them. And it is from there that I got the idea to start reclaiming flow. It was from there that I got the idea to start sharing these workshops with companies.
So if you had advice for folks that are kind of like rounding home base, it sounds like, don't be afraid to extend, like assuming that it fits your budget or whatnot, like don't beat yourself up if you don't feel like you're kind of cooked and fully ready. And then B, kind of like think of it as an experiment, and like apply the things that you learned and see what kind of comes out the other end, right?
Totally. And this time is really a gift. And I will, I actually will compare it to school, like there's a structured path. You go to undergrad and then you work a little bit and then you go to grad school. I mean, some people, right? And then you go to grad school, but then you're done. Well, I believe in lifelong learning. In fact, I worked at an education company a while ago where I went around preaching about lifelong learning. And to me, that's what the sabbatical is. It's about lifelong learning. Not only are you learning about yourself, which you're never really given the time and space to do, but you also then get the time and the opportunity to learn about things that you might be interested in, but you never had the time for. And those learnings stick with you, because notice it was actually 2 years, 2 or 3. I don't even, it was a few years after hold on. Actually, I'll do the math. 2020 was when I started doing this on the side. Okay, I started doing this on the side in 2020, and I went on my sabbatical in 2017, and I worked in the middle.
Awesome. Okay, I feel like we reached a good spot here. I want to give you some time to talk about your book. I mean, in many ways, I'm grateful for our friendship and having crossed paths with you, but I'm also kind of following your lead and excited to see about this book process. So tell us about the book, when it's coming out, what it's about, where people can get their hands on it, and I'll obviously put links in the comments and all that fun stuff.
Awesome. Well, I let me just share a story, which, DJ, you don't know the story, I don't think. When I was little, I wrote a short story. It was fiction. It was cute. And because I've always been an overachiever, I tried to get the short story published. And so I have in my possession a rejection letter from Random House. So a long time ago, Penguin, Random House, there were all these mergers. There was Penguin and there was Random House. Well, I have a rejection letter from Random House from decades ago that said that I was somebody to watch in the future.
Whoa.
I always wanted to be a writer. I didn't let myself want to be a writer because I knew that as a Black person in America, you got to get a real job that pays money because you're going to be broke. And as my parents explained to me consistently, we're poor. It is your responsibility to not be poor so you can take care of us. And so I never tried to be a writer. I did 0 things to try to be a writer. And then because of the work that I'm doing in helping Black people feel better, because of racism, I got this book deal with Penguin Random House.
Yeah.
Okay. Full circle, Penguin Random House. The book is called Black People Breathe. It comes out in March of 2023. It is now available for pre-order. Z Clark, Black People Breathe. It's on Amazon. You go to Penguin's site, Target, Barnes & Noble, basically any place that you can buy a book, you can buy Black People Breathe. And it is a collection of both memoir, where I share stories of things that have happened to me, and how to, like, tools that you can use, mindfulness and breathwork tools that you can use if and when these things happen to you. And so let me give you examples of chapter titles, right? Shopping while Black. We already talked about that grocery store incident, right? But that's not the only thing that has happened to me, and that has happened to others, right? So shopping while Black, the only, what it feels like to be the only, RESPECT at work, and all the challenges that happen, and then tools. And so at the end of the book, actually, it's almost like a glossary based on how you're feeling, because one of the first steps to mindfulness is recognize how you're feeling, and then you can do something about it. And so maybe it's anger, maybe it's anxiety, maybe it's sadness. And based on how you're feeling, there is a breathing technique or a mindfulness tool that you can use. And while this book is called Black People Breathe, because it was written for Black people, and I am not ashamed to say this, it was written for Black people to heal, there are lessons that other people can learn. As an ally, you can get to know more intimately what the Black experience is like. But guess what? You might get angry too, and you might get anxiety too. Maybe the causes are different because people aren't treating you like shit on a daily basis, but the causes are different, but you're still going to get angry, and the breathing techniques still apply to you. And if you're a person of color and you're not Black, but you're a person of color, guess what? Very likely that you might be in a situation where you are the only, or where somebody says something that's offensive to you. And so I believe that there are lessons here that you can take as well. So Black People Breathe, it comes out in March, and I strongly encourage you to pre-order this book because it's my first book, and they said I was somebody to watch in the future.
Yeah, I'm learning like pre-orders matter a lot, so I will definitely share it with my network. I'm super excited for you and impressed by you and like excited for your journey and see what happens. So thank you so much, Z, and for everyone else, thanks for coming. If you have any questions, put them in the comments. But all right, talk to you soon.
Hi, thank you.